亲爱的观众朋友们，大家好，这里是西雅图中文电台西雅图国际电影节的电影节专访。我们今天呢有幸邀请到了电影《Chasing Time》的两位导演 Jeff Yang 和我们另外一位女导演，她是 Sarah Kill。我们很有幸的邀请到他们今天做这一次电影的专访。Hi, Jeff and Sarah, how are you guys doing?
Good, good. 大家好. Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course. Jeff, okay, let's start with some question. We know Chasing Time recently had a premiere at Hot Docs, and now it's U.S. premiere here at the Seattle International Film Festival. How are you both feeling right now?
Amazing. Seattle's actually my hometown, so it's amazing to have the U.S. premiere here. It's been, the first festival I ever worked was Seattle, so to be able to come back, it feels like a homecoming for both of us, actually, for different ways. But yeah, it's amazing to be able to premiere it with my family and friends in the audience. My sixth grade teacher was there, my college advisor was there, so it was a really special experience.
That's awesome.
It was we had, the screening was beautiful yesterday. It's such a big screen, and to be able to see this movie at the size that honors the glaciers themselves, I think is really special.
Awesome. Okay, Jeff, I would like to ask you, the Chasing Time is the combination of the significant projects, right? How did all of this come about for you? And what was the motivation for the creating the Chasing Time? Would you...
So this National Geographic photographer, James Baylock, he had this idea many years ago to do time lapses of glaciers. And he wanted to see how these glaciers all around the world were going to change year after year. And so when I was in college still, I started to join him out in the field. We went to Iceland, and we went to Alaska, and we went to Greenland together, and we went on all of these adventures. And we started that in 2007. And here we are, 15 years later, we went back to those same locations as he's closing this project up, and he wanted to put it to an end. The photography did the work. The photography got the story out there in a really, really big way. And we wanted to honor that legacy of James's work and this team that has been traveling the world to create this visual evidence of what's happening to the glaciers.
That's great.
Yeah, it was such an honor to see James yesterday at the screening. I had a chance actually went to Iceland. It was like 3 years ago.
Awesome.
I had to had a layover in the town for 2 days. It was during Christmas time. I expect to have a lot of snow. I have my snow boots. I have my jackets. Additional layers. I was like, it's gonna be so cold. When I arrived in Iceland, and then I was surprised I didn't see much snow. I talked to local people, like hotel receptionists, taxi driver. I talked to them, they were like, this is a really weird year that didn't have much snow. It's actually pretty warm. It was shocking to see the weather wasn't really the same as it used to be. And then after I watched the movie yesterday, it was really emotional and touching. Especially seeing all the pictures I guess took all those years. So I had a question. So from very beginning, start the film and movie, what other things have been changed in our mind throughout these years after the film? Is there anything that changed on your mind, or how do you guys feel throughout these years?
Do you want me to take it, or? I think for me, I'm interpreting your question looking at the last 15 years, and over these 15 years or so, I think everybody that I know that works in climate science is surprised by how fast things are changing now. And everybody expected things to change, but we're hitting tipping points and things are shifting so much faster than the scientists expected. The scary part of that is it's not looking like it's slowing down. Right. And part of it is, one of the things that I wrestle with is what scientists think versus what the public thinks. And there's a huge gap between scientists who are very, very worried and concerned about how the planet is changing versus a lot of the public doesn't seem to get it or seem to care. And I don't think that's the public's fault in some cases, but this is why we need these types of stories that help wake the public up to what's going on.
Yeah, and just to add to that, when you all made Chasing Ice, the world was in a very different place where the purpose of the film is to show that climate change is real for the skeptics and the people who are denying the existence of climate change. But now that it's 15 years later, I think there is more of a general acceptance that climate change is real. It's just we have passive believers that aren't necessarily getting involved with the climate movement, and so that was the inspiration behind this film, was trying to tell the more human side of climate change and focusing on the humans behind the work and not just the devastation itself. And so the hope is that through seeing the perseverance and the dedication of James, as well as the team working with him, people could see themselves in this story and recognize that, like James and like Jeff, that everyone has something to contribute, whether you are an artist, a musician, you could be a lawyer, a teacher, whatever your role may be, you have something to offer that's unique to you, and it's more of figuring out how can I get involved in this movement.
That's right, thank you both. And especially Sarah just mentioned about like translation, right? I and doing the different roles in this, but as you are transition into a new role as a co-director with Jeff. So I would like to know, like, this for this changing time must have presented a unique challenges, especially within the context to the exciting cooperation and the relationship between Jeff and James. We watched the movie last night, and we saw that there's a touching story between you and James. It's really great and a good story. Even you guys didn't really shows up a lot, but I know there's like a timeline, right? But so, Sarah, can you describe your experiences stepping into this role for the first time and navigating to the dynamic of the team? How's that feel?
Yeah, so I actually met Jeff and his longtime producing partner, Fri Sun, at Sundance a few years ago, and as I mentioned during the Q&A, they were my dream filmmakers to work with, and so I was so honored to be able to join their team, first as a production coordinator on The Social Dilemma, and now we've been working together for about 5 years now, and a couple of years ago, Jeff and Marissa, as my mentors, have been so nurturing of my career and helping foster my aspirations. And so when I voiced a desire to learn directing, this opportunity came up, and so I stepped into the co-director role, and it was a really great way for me to explore my own voice and vision as a director under the guidance of Jeff. He was such a great teacher, mentor, and friend through the entire process, and there's a lot of trust that goes into allowing me to step into that role because I was, directing him as he was wearing the subject hat, and so it was a lot of prep work that we did ahead of time to make sure that he was comfortable, that he could be on camera and be his full authentic self, and that we could explore this relationship and mentorship between him and James. And there's a lot of trust with James as well to be able to share his story of his cancer journey and being vulnerable on camera. There were so many moments when we all cried together, like in the interviews, and so I was so grateful to be able to be in this role as an outsider of this relationship among the three men, and being able to dive deeper with them about their, decades-long relationship and friendship and the journey they've all gone through together. And so to be able to share that on camera, I feel like gives more relatability to the story. And I just really appreciate you for being able to be vulnerable on camera.
I think part of it is like we didn't want this to be a movie about climate change in some ways, and like that's the background and that's like the arena that the story is taking place in. But we really wanted it to be a human story, and we wanted it to be a story about life and about mortality and about cancer. James got a cancer diagnosis in the process of this project, and we wanted to process what that meant for him, and for somebody to have a cancer diagnosis while they're working on climate change and while they're documenting glaciers that are dying. Like that was a really heavy thing that we all thought about as a team a lot. And the parallels, like this is a story about mortality and reflection on phases of life. And And so the intergenerational story from him to me and from me and Sarah and many other mentor-mentee pairs on our team, like that's what we really wanted to try to accentuate with this story, and to let the glaciers be in the background in many ways. And the story is taking place on a landscape that is constantly changing, and that's what we were striving for and trying to tease out those relationships.
That's awesome. I'm also really glad he's doing well now.
Yeah, he is doing well. Yeah.
And also, there's one more question for Sarah.
Okay.
So, I know, and everybody can see from the screen, it's gonna be hard, right? And it's always hard for girls doing documentary like this, especially in that kind of places in Iceland. It's super cold. How did you keep up with lots of like camera equipment and also at the same time like hiking, keep up with the boys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was going in, I was very intimidated and afraid I wouldn't keep up. You know, like,
it wasn't keeping up.
Okay. You know, because Jeff and James and Savar, they've been doing this type of work for decades. Like you all are, you know, especially James is a mountaineer, like he's an adventurer, he's been doing this type of work his entire life. And so I was really concerned about my ability to keep up and have the camera equipment, but I really did want to, you know, carry my weight, literally. So before we went to Iceland the first time, Jeff actually had me train in preparation for the grueling nature of that, you know, the physical labor of carrying like 30, 35 pounds of equipment. And so I actually grabbed a backpacking backpack and filled it with metal cans of soup and vegetables and some liter bottles just to make sure it was enough weight. And I was carrying it around. There's a lake near my house, and I would walk around the lake. I would run up and down stairs. And then before the trip, Jeff took me to Rocky Mountain National Park.
We wanted to do some outdoor hiking and to like, get into a real environment. And so it was like a weekend, and we another friend of ours, we were going to go to the mountains. And we looked at the weather, and it looked miserable. It's
like a blizzard.
Just a blizzard. It's so cold. It's so windy. Should we really go? And I remember we were like debating, should we do this or not? And I was like, no, this is the perfect time. We have to do this. And we just motivate ourselves and get out there. And
it was so cold.
It was very cold. It was very windy. The photos from that day are awesome. I mean, it's just like blizzard, sun's going sideways. But you were able to experience that and to get through it with comfort, right? I want to say, like, it was hard, but it was also like, oh, we could do that. Like, that we're not going to die. And then part of it was like that thing that we experienced in the mountains that day was so much harder than anything we were going to have in Iceland, and based on the time of year and everything else. So I think it was like a perfect training trip, just to like be comfortable with.
When do you feel like, okay, Sarah, now you passed?
That was a big test. That was a big test. I mean, because if you hadn't done well that day, it would have been hard. Like, this has nothing to do with gender. It has nothing to do with. It's just a matter of like, we're going to harsh environments, and you need to make sure that the team can handle those types of environments. And if somebody is breaking down or can't do it, then they're not the right person to be in that situation. Fortunately, like we were working with a number of new people who were based in Iceland that we'd never worked with before, and they were all phenomenal. And I think there are different types of people who do this type of work regularly, right? Shooting on a set in Hollywood is very different than being on a mountaintop in the middle of an exposed, snowstorm. And so our team out in Iceland were phenomenal and really just helped keep everybody safe, keep everybody fed, and be able to work cohesively as a team to accomplish what we were there for.
That is awesome.
I probably have this similar or follow-up question.
Okay.
Was there a time that you feel like, you miss your family, that you want to, like, is there like a roadblock that you're like, I cannot do this? Is there any time like throughout the time that when you were in Iceland or working on this film, have you ever thought about,
Yeah, I mean, fortunately the trips were relatively short because it was only taking down one camera and then we returned a year later. So we were only in Iceland about 10 days, both trips, and they were a year apart. So, I mean, there was never a point where I necessarily was like, oh, I really miss being home or was homesick. But, you know, it was grueling work, like carrying the camera equipment, going up, and you know, I hope that it can inspire other people that, you know, are women and women of color. You know, as you're noticing, I am a petite, short girl, so like it is, you know, like the fact that I was able to do it, I hope other people who are like me are inspired to try something like this, to explore storytelling and be motivated to go out in the field and do this type of work, because we need more representation behind the camera.
Thank you. And next question will be the question I mentioned for Jeff. I was captivated by the soundtrack of this production and this documentary. So I'm really curious about how did you put up yourself mixed with composer and a songwriter?
Yeah. Cool, thank you.
How's that happen?
So I've been playing the piano since I was 5 years old, and I've always loved music, and I've always wanted to write music. And we were not planning on that for this project, but then Sarah and our other producer, Larissa, and some others on our team were really pushing and encouraging me to compose and to think about it. And honestly, I was on the fence, and it was like new, and time and energy and all of that. But then something switched for me around like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to learn this. And with the whole theme of mentorship throughout the film, there's a composer, Mark Crawford, that I've worked with on past projects, and Mark was willing to mentor me through this process. So everything was just like, you have to do it. Like, why say no? And so it's a different headspace. It's a very different energy. And Mark carried the majority of the weight. Mark is super, super talented, and we kind of learned how to collaborate together on coming up with ideas. And you know, coming in as a director, there's a certain way you relate with a composer usually in trying to craft that, and this was like a totally new process for me around trying to find like, what can I express and what can I say in this process as well. So I love the songwriting process. I'm struggling right now around like, how much can I do it on future projects, or I want to do it, but then like the time commitment is real. So I think music is going to continue to express itself through me in different ways moving forward, and so I'm excited about that.
On that note of mentorship too, we should add that we have two amazing vocalists who are also a mentor-mentee pair, Malcolm and Ray, and so it's just really cool to be able to add so many layers of mentorship throughout the filmmaking process.
Yeah. Yesterday at the screening, after the screening happened, the projectionist came up to me and said, "Who wrote that song after the movie and who performed in it?" Like, he was raving about their voices, and I was really stoked.
And that was actually the debut of that song, because the Hot Dogs version was an older version.
So we're actually the first
time
to hear it.
Amazing.
Amazing.
I was like, when the music started, the song started, I'm like, I have to find out who's that
really?
person.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
We were all trying
and I said it till the song played it all finished, and then it worked out. I waited till everything's finished. It's just like something is immediately jumps out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
works so well. Thank you.
It's really cool.
I have a question. So what, you guys are part of the mentorship, right? You guys can also pass on to, you know, the people, like, you know, it's great to reach out to the people that you admire, and then, you know, ask if they can participate in any of the project and help them. So what are some of the words you have for, you know, our next generation or young people, like, who might be in high school or in college, and then they feel like they are not sure what are they, you know, interested in or what they want to do? So, like, do you have any advice for them?
Want me to take that?
Please.
So if there's one thing that we hope audiences, and especially young people, get out of the film, it's this relay race line at the end of the film that Jeff says about how this climate work isn't a sprint nor is it a marathon, but it's a relay race, and we all run our leg and, you know, contribute to the movement, and then we pass the baton forward. And we love that line because it really is about intergenerational mentorship and how we're all in this together and that we all have something to contribute in order to build a sustainable future and a just future for future generations to come. And so we, especially with young people, I know it's a really hard time right now with everything going on in the world. It's so easy to feel a sense of paralysis, to be depressed, to feel like, oh, what can I do? So that's why we shared this line in the film, because we want people to recognize that you're not alone, and we need more people to join our team and get involved in this movement. And you know, if you have that community and if you have other people uplifting you and building you up, you feel more empowered. And that's why we're encouraging this mentorship call to action, because anyone can be a mentor. You know, and it doesn't have to just be in the climate work. It could be in any work, any industry, any field, any movement for change. It's so easy to reach out to someone and to change their life. And that's why I invited my teacher and my college advisor, because that is like a great example of how much they influenced me in my career path, and how much, you know, my 6th grade teacher, that was years ago. And so her words of encouragement and her support stayed with me through life. And I hope that's a great example of how much one person, and through James and you, how much one person can touch someone and inspire them to do something great. And so, that's, if you can mentor, you should mentor. If you're looking for a mentor, reach out to people and let them know the interest. And people are so willing to help and support. And even just in one conversation, people love talking about what they do.
We had a little party yesterday after the screening, and just looking at everybody in that room, it was like, there's so many people who have contributed and given to this team and to this work and to what we're trying to accomplish here. And this morning I was journaling and I was like, oh, there's so many more people I want to thank. Like, there's so many people that have helped in some ways and provided guidance. And so that word mentor, like, sometimes it's a direct relationship, and sometimes it's a very casual, you know, somebody that helped shape you. And I think what we're really wanting to elevate here is, you know, how do we recognize that, and how do we voice gratitude for that, and then how do we practice more and more passing it forward. And that's something that we both have been talking about a lot as a team. Like, how can we help train other filmmakers? How do we give other filmmakers insights into their craft and what they're trying to accomplish? And that's just our team and our little bubble of like, hey, we know how to make movies and can help you figure that out. But that applies to anybody in any industry for any cause. If you care about climate, if you care about gun control, if you care about whatever it is, right? How do we get more and more people to recognize that they can use their time and their voice and their energy to make a difference? Like, that's the real opportunity here.
Thank you. Thank you both. And next question will be for Jeff. I wish James could be here too, because this question I was prepared for both of you, but it's okay. Yeah, I'm sure you can answer that too.
So. I'll give you my James impression.
Okay, that's great. Okay, that's great. So the question is, with such an extensive archive of photographer and film footage captured over the years, you both, right? How did you approach the daunting task of selecting and weaving together the visuals to convey the story?
Editing is so hard. Editing is, making a documentary film really comes down to the editing, and it is a big puzzle. And if you and your team are not into puzzles, then don't go into filmmaking. It is it's really challenging. So there are a bunch of different things. First of all, it's like looking at all of the footage that we had and working with Sarah and our editor Dave in crafting that down. But even just with the time lapses themselves, James shared recently, there were over 1.7 million images in the archive for the time lapses. Of those, 200,000 of them had bad weather, like rain and sleet, and just were like unusable. And people have had to go through that to filter that out. For the time lapses in Chasing Time, our team built a bunch of scripts to figure out how to filter out images that were bad and what wasn't working, and then how do we just take 15 years and turn it into 30 seconds? Like, that was really, really tedious and really complicated because the weather changes every day and really fast, and how do you let people see what we're trying to show them, to focus the attention on the glacier and on the ice? So that was really the goal, and I think kind of zooming out for a second, I think that's the thing that kept driving us. Like, what is the story we're trying to tell? We want to show visually and emotionally how the ice changed. And a lot of it, a big part of the challenge was, one of the hardest things was, how do you go back to the same place over and over and over again? So when we were in Iceland last year and the year before, like, we found video footage from 2007 that we brought with us. And there were times when we were even just holding up an iPad and looking at footage from 2007 and being like, I think we're in the right spot. Oh, wait, it wasn't shot here. And like making sure we have the same camera position and we could film the same exact perspective. I mean, that's happened so many times, over and over and over again, still photography, video, and across the board. But it really is just this massive editing process of shaving down and shaving down and shaving down until you get to like the heart of what you're trying to say.
I know, because I did a documentary a few years ago when I was training in China Central Television. We did documentary for the smoke. Human smoke isn't good. So I can't imagine, when I was sitting in the cinema yesterday, I was like, how many footages those guys did? Because for us, we did 35 minutes documentary as well for that film. We had like, seriously, like bunch of we actually did buy the film. We didn't do the digital camera.
Wow.
So can you imagine, like, we have the copies like more than this table that long.
Right.
And that tall. We'll like check each single pictures and footages to pick it up, to put up for 35 minutes. So I can imagine for 15 years you guys did all those 15 years footage. And put
there's a lot of hard drives.
We have that's why I'm like, I must ask you guys this question. How did you get there? Thank you so much.
Anything you want to
It's
add?
hard work.
I mean, just have to give such a special shout out to our editor, Jay, because he really did go through a lot of that footage, even all the archival through the years too, and made selects of all the footage. And so, a lot of the work was him. Making it easier on us.
And now pass on this mentorship to young people.
I also have a question for Sarah. So I saw lots of the boys coming down, up and down. What do you do that time? What did you do that time? Are you like
on the mountain?
And also in Iceland.
Yes. Yeah, I was with them the entire time.
Oh my gosh. How's that feel?
It was great, I mean, the landscapes are so beautiful, and to be there, especially with James and Jeff and Samara, as they're just talking about their journeys of what the past 15 years have been like and what they've seen, and even just watching them take down the camera was so emotional. And as James says in the beginning of the film, there's like a spiritual connection that you can't help but feel while you're there. And so it was so rewarding to be able to understand James's philosophy around our connection to nature and the fact that we as humans aren't separate from nature, but we're a part of it. And so once we understand that we're a part of this ecosystem and we all have our roles to play, he had this line that ended up not being in the film, but it's like you walk a little softer with humility. And so, I feel like my entire worldview has been changed and influenced by these guys and my own spiritual connection with nature and how I feel like I want to live my life and being more connected to the outdoors. And, it just, once you have that shift in perspective, I think it just follows with your life.
So also, Jeff, this story is being really hard touched to all the audience yesterday when we first see this screening shows up in the cinema, right? I want to ask you, how did you put the story? Because normally the documentary, we will say that most of the documentary, people will say, oh, I don't want to watch documentary because it's boring. It's just teaching, or it's just telling you one thing happened, that's it. But watching Chasing Time and Chasing Ice, several times I really tears down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's several moments I was like, oh gosh, I hope nobody can see me cry.
Yeah, I can see the girls sitting next to me also crying. Yeah.
So,
I want to know when everybody cried. I'm so curious about
yeah, we
that.
will send him a Hanju.
Yeah.
I was in the middle,
Very
in the
touching,
back.
yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you the question, how did you put all those stories?
Yeah.
And but you don't see you actually meaning, like you don't see there's like, okay, the director put the story together. We don't see the story, but there's a story. You know what I mean?
I think I heard.
And audience will feel like, wow, beautiful pictures, significant, beautiful, each images on screen, but there's come out with emotion.
Right.
So how did you do that?
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
show each moment to the audience
Yeah.
of that emotion and deliver the
Yeah.
story to the
Yeah.
audience?
So first of all, sometimes I don't like using the word documentary because of how people think about it and what the association is. And it's like, this is a movie, it's a film, there's a story here, and it happens to be true. Like, we didn't script it. And so I normally think of it as like scripted versus unscripted.
Yeah. Even
So-
there's don't have that much dialogue in the
You
film.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
You guys
pictures.
don't
Right.
talk a lot.
Yeah.
There's no story.
We're trying to let the
actually.
landscape tell the story.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's awesome.
the process, like Sarah and I worked with our editor Dave, and we also have a story consultant, Vicky Curtis, that we've worked with on different projects, and with our producing team. And usually it's like, what are we trying to say? It's this chicken and egg. It's a back and forth between like, this is what we've captured, and this is what we're trying to say. And sometimes you're like, oh, we're missing pieces of the puzzle, we need to film more. Or sometimes it's like, we have so much, we just need to edit down, right? But this is, like, we're hoping that the audiences can feel a connection to the people and to the human story.
Definitely.
And to let the landscape sort of unfold over time too. So, like I said, it really is like a puzzle. And sometimes I think it's like we're trying to make a picture, and we want it to look a certain way. Maybe we want there to be mountains in the back and a river and some trees, and then you have to go out and you film and you capture a whole bunch of like blue colors one day, and okay, maybe this is the sky, and then another day you capture a bunch of green, and then like, okay, maybe this is the tree over there, and then you're in the edit room and you're just like taking these colors and these pieces and you're moving them around, and like, oh wait, the blue isn't the sky, the blue is the water. We have to completely change it, and it's this process of capturing more stuff and then shaping it in the edit and capturing more and shaping it until you get to something that looks like what you want to hang on the wall.
It also makes me think of, I met Pete Docter, who's the head of Pixar right now, and he did Toy Story, he did Inside Out, like just some of my favorite films. And I asked him once, I was like, how do you craft these beautiful stories that work for both children and adults? And he was like, I've never thought of it that way. He doesn't think about the audience and what they like. He thinks of it of more, what do I like and what resonates with me? And so that was how I was starting to think about the film as well. And you always advise me to trust my gut as well. So it was the combination of those two things. And as we were exploring the story around the glaciers and around James, there was this moment where we early on had a conversation over the phone, and Jeff was talking about how much James had an influence in shaping his early worldview and his career, and through that he then shared the story of getting the phone call of learning about James's cancer diagnosis. And as Jeff was sharing the story with me, I just had in my gut like this feeling that, oh my gosh, this is such a moving story of mentorship, and like it was just the way that you shared it. It was so raw and real and emotional, and we both in our lives have experienced cancer with our own families, and it just felt so relatable and human. And so after he was done telling that story, I was like, Jeff, I think this is the story, and I think you need to be more of a character in that story so we could see James through his lens. And so that really is what it is what stories stand out to you and what is making you move you and feel you, what stays with you, what sticks. And that really helps guide the storytelling.
And I think that's one of the challenges. It's like, it's hard. The work as an artist and as a storyteller is to be in tune with that gut instinct, and how do you cultivate and practice that? And it's hard, especially in the society that we're in that's so like linear, like thought centered. And so to be able to like lean into gut intuition, that's really a strong muscle within artistic creation.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And also there's several moments like when James has a knee problem, when he's sitting and then your coworkers, 3 of them in the room for lunch or whatever, and dinner, and he was like sitting there, and then the coworkers say, "Oh, that's why you shouldn't go there." That's why it's like make you feel you want love, but same times it's like, oh, it's really touched. You know, so it's great story. Even that's like a documentary film, but it's real story. It's like so real, put to the front of the audience. So I really appreciate every bit of the film. Yeah.
So I know that James said that he's now spending more time with the family. I'm just curious, has he want to go back to Iceland? And then again, because I know he spent most of his lifetime, like, you know, out there. Is he wanted to go back again, like to see, you know, the landscape?
Yeah, I think he just loves being outside. And he lives in Colorado. Our team we live in Colorado, and he goes out to the mountains. He has a little place, like a little cabin that he likes to go to. And so I think most of the time he'd rather be there than getting on an airplane and traveling internationally. Now he just complains about jet lag and getting to another country, and it's like not worth it.
He's actually a fun person.
Well, I was like, you need to slow down a little bit. That guy, he just is so driven, and he's, you know, writing another book. He's did the Library of Congress.
But I think he is starting to learn how to slow down in a way that he never has before, and I think he's starting to appreciate slowing down in a way that he hasn't before. And I think it's interesting seeing how he has been shifting over the last decade, as he gets older and as his kids have now left the house and what have you.
Yeah, to me, when I watched the documentary or the film yesterday, it's different documentary than the ones I have watched before. Because there's a story and then it's touching, but it's not like trying to make me cry. The whole time I can see the purpose. Like some of the documentary people are trying to make me cry the whole time. I don't like that. You know, I like just, you know, I like it to keep it inside, and I can, you know, think about it when I go back home. So this film yesterday was really touching. Also, I had a family member also had a cancer, like, you know, they're in their lifetime, so it's really relatable. So I really I'm just curious, like, do you guys have other like documentary or film that you guys are working on after this one? I know this is a busy schedule for you guys to go out, and then but is there any more film coming
I'll
up?
let you speak to the Exposure Labs, but for me personally, I am doing a fellowship right now. There's a local Colorado organization called Cinefe, and so in addition to working with Jeff on his projects, I'm also on my own working on a scripted project. And so
awesome.
I hope to continue directing and exploring narrative work in addition to this unscripted work that we're working on. But if you want to...
Yeah, I mean, we're our team, we're working on a bunch of stuff together, like multiple projects that will take years and years to make, so it's just a matter of like pushing them all forward at the same time.
Is there a topic that you guys already selected, or
a lot of them are
nature based
in a relationship with the natural world and trying to heal that, and I'd say like all of them are different lenses on that core theme, and how do we fix the broken parts of this society? Like that's a big challenge.
That's very good. And follow with that, you just mentioned, I will ask, in closing, the chasing time, and also now chasing time and chasing ice, highlighted the urgency of climate change and importance of the collective action. What impact do you each anticipated chasing time having on audience, and what message or call to the action do you hope viewers take away from it?
We had a couple people come up to us after the screening yesterday and say, this should be required viewing in every school, or everybody needs to see this, or like things like that. And whenever I hear something like that, it's always just a beautiful reminder that, first of all, this work is worth it. And like we did it for a reason, and we're thrilled and honored that people get to see it. And then for them to say that they want to share it with other people and they want other people to watch it and to learn what's happening here, that's the most important part. So what we're working on with our team is trying to figure out how do we get this movie out there in the right way, and how can we get it in front of audiences, and how can we let this story do the work that we tried to put into the film so that it can get this message out to the world.
And I really hope this film could go to China as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Really public in China. People will love it. People will love it.
That's
and
great.
also the kids. And I think all the message you guys want to send in, I think more importantly, it's for the young generation.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
China needs this. Needs to see this.
Yeah.
Kids need to see this.
We'll work on that.
I mean, that's the hope. I remember reading something about how there is one of the kids who, I think he's a teenager now, who was in a case in, is it Wyoming or Montana, that was against the state around better climate protections. I'm gonna butcher what the case was. It was
There's a big lawsuit that's been happening in Montana where students are suing the federal government over the government's lack of taking care of climate and the environment. And some of them have cited chasing ice as being a place of inspiration that woke them
when
up.
he was 5 years old too.
And like just to be able to hear that and be like, wow, this movie helped spark this movement and fed different voices and different people within the movement. And if we can accomplish that, like we are just a small team trying to make something and put it out into the world, but the impacts that these films and these stories can have, like we'll never know the full lineage of where that flows, and that's like a beautiful thing. And at the same time, I wish I did know, like where who's watching it and how is it affecting them. But I think that's one of the beautiful things about making art. You put it out into the world and you don't know what it's going to do. And you just hope people get to see it and reflect on it, and you hope that it changes them.
Right, like if we could reach that one kid with Chasing Time, who then goes on to be a leader within the climate movement or whatever it may be, if they change the world, like that would feel like such a win.
Right.
The message I got when I went back home yesterday is I want to go back to Iceland again. I want to pass a message to my friends, like we should go to Iceland to see those glacier. It's melting every second. Like we're it's very incredible. Like I want to go back again. I would need to find the time to go back.
Sarah. So during the Chasing Time production, were there any unexpected obstacles or results that had a lasting impact on you as a filmmaker?
Well, we did come up with some obstacles of people of our team getting sick and changing, having to pivot or be flexible and adapt. It was really great having, as Jeff was saying, local crew members from Iceland who were so familiar with the landscape and the weather, so whenever we did need to adapt, we could just go to a different location that was maybe less rainy and film there. And so I guess the takeaway for me was just always being open to adapting and never following a strict schedule or not having strict expectations of what the day-to-day is going to look like. And that, I guess, is unique to documentary filmmaking, is you have to adapt.
Yes and no, like even for narrative stuff. But like it's funny because like sometimes we would have a schedule and you look at it and you're just like, I know that's not going to be the schedule. There's no way we're doing that in those days. But if it makes us feel good that we have an idea of where we're starting, great. But the reality is like being prepared and being prepared to adapt, like that's really the sweet spot.
Well, and I think that's the funny thing about producing versus directing, because I was an associate producer and typically my day job is producing. So that was a huge lesson, was you can produce all you want and prep all you want and schedule and have everything planned to the T, and then it's just going to be thrown out the window. And as a director, you just
day one, you hit the ground, that plan doesn't work anymore, and you have to roll with it.
Okay, Jeff and Sarah, thank you so much for the interview today. It's our pleasure. Because of the timeline, we might have to finish it soon. But I do have the last questions for you, Jeff. What's the next you're planning to do? I know you both already talked about like what's the next movement, but I really curious about. Do you have any like personal or your next project? Do you planning to do more work or object with James later?
James and I will always have a close relationship, and that's never going to change. And I think what we're working on right now, the biggest thing is wanting to figure out what the right home is for Chasing Time, and where is this movie going to live, and how do we get it out, and how do we find the places and the people that can connect with the film and find the audience for this project. While we're doing that, we're also figuring out all of our next stories, and we have more than we can do in a lifetime.
Awesome.
So.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate the time, and it's our pleasure to spend time together today. Thank you so much. And Jeff, can I ask you one more thing? As you can speak some Chinese, we are Chinese Radio Seattle. Would you please say something to our audience, our Chinese audience?
谢谢大家，很高兴认识你，Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. 也谢谢观众朋友们的收看。然后今天我们的专访到这儿就结束了，请您在线上和线下都可以收看这次的专访节目。